Dude, I freaking loved this movie. This was awesome. Like, literally just so much fun. So that's right, people. We are back 2 weeks in a row with another movie about an empire. I mean, this time, not a frozen empire, not Ghostbusters. Well, not Ghostbusters. There's an element of frozenness in play here for sure. But this time, we got Godzilla and Kong. Godzilla X Kong. Of course, the last movie with Godzilla versus Kong. And so this time, they're not fighting. Well, maybe a little at first, because, they have their differences, but this time they're putting their differences aside to team up against an even bigger threat. Godzilla X Kong. We got a new empire now. And I'm going to be honest, I've had very mixed feelings on this whole MonsterVerse. Especially when you look at Godzilla Minus One. When I watched that, I was like, whoa, this is what a good quality Godzilla movie can be. And I definitely like some of these movies. I mean, no, I think I'd say I like all of these movies. But specifically Godzilla versus Kong, I think at the time when it came out, because I watched it the day it came out on HBO Max, because that was during the pandemic, whenever everything that year was day and date on HBO Max and in theaters. I watched it that day, and I think I liked it at the time. But last night I rewatched it in preparation for, I'm going to go see Godzilla X Kong. I should rewatch Godzilla versus Kong. And I did. And I found myself really not liking that movie. I mean, I definitely don't hate it, but I found myself bored at many times and just not interested. I did not have as much fun with that movie as I did with Godzilla X Kong. This is a huge step up in my opinion, and I just had a blast watching this film. Now, speaking of Godzilla Minus One, obviously that's a great, serious quality, an Oscar-winning Godzilla movie, which is awesome. This is not that. I loved it and I had a lot of fun with it, but it's not a great movie, but it's a good movie. And if you put aside expectations, don't go in expecting anything like that, story and all that stuff, it's not what this movie is supposed to be. This movie is just a big, fun, action-packed blockbuster, and that's all it needs to be, and I think it fully succeeds in that goal. And interestingly, the biggest complaint that has been with the MonsterVerse has been the human characters, because nobody cares about them. We're all just here to see Godzilla and Kong. That's all we want to see. We want to see them punching each other and throwing around and taking out some buildings, all that stuff. The human characters, we do not care about them. And so that's the problem with this franchise, because you still kind of need them in there to give us our exposition, since Godzilla and Kong don't talk. So the thing with this movie that I really enjoyed is that not only is the human characters having much smaller roles than they did in Godzilla vs. Kong, but the role and the story of these human characters is actually interesting this time. I liked that, before it was all science stuff and, we're scientists and we're doing research and all this stuff. But here we actually, our humans go to Hollow Earth and they're exploring this new land, and we get some really interesting mythology and lore in play here. It's just some really cool stuff, and they're funny as well. Brian Tyree Henry. Love that guy. Hilarious. He just adds a great bit of comedy to this film. Same for Dan Stevens. He was a great addition here. I loved his character. Of course, the returning characters from Godzilla versus Kong as well. Great also. Now, this movie, a lot of people have described it as a Saturday morning cartoon, and that very much is what it is. Especially in some of these action sequences, there were things that I was laughing out loud at that weren't jokes. They were just pieces of the action, and it was funny. Because Godzilla and Kong, they're doing WWE moves on each other, on our other villains, and it's hilarious. This I wouldn't consider a spoiler, but we have our kind of baby Kong character in here, Suko. Let's just say he gets used as a weapon at one point, and it's hilarious. The action sequences here, and I I was expecting a bit of ridiculousness going into this, just seeing the trailers and the obvious marketing ploys of, oh, Godzilla's pink now. That's just so they can sell more toys. No, Godzilla, Kong now has a glove. He's basically got an Infinity Gauntlet. Like, that's just to sell more toys. And I mean, if we're being honest with ourselves, that is honestly the real reason that was included in the film. But the actual explanation for it in the film, it works. It feels natural. It has a reason to be there. Both of those elements. So I thought that was great. I thought that worked really, really well. And when it comes to our villains, they were really cool. I don't think, they definitely could have been expanded upon a bit more and could have had a bit of a larger role in the movie. But I mean, what they were there for, they served their purpose, and I think it was really cool. The action sequences, like I said, while ridiculous at some points, it's awesome. Like, that is the key and the highlight of this franchise, is just the action. And like I said, that's what we come here to see, is Godzilla versus Kong, Kong versus Scar King, and all that stuff. So that's great. I absolutely love that. Soundtrack, fantastic. It was very much like almost like a Guardians of the Galaxy style soundtrack. It was a lot of throwbacks, a lot of oldies in there, but I loved it. That's some of my favorite types of music, so I love seeing some songs that I haven't heard in a while played in this movie. That was great to see. And also, going back to how I was talking about with the human characters, how in past movies it's just been all like, oh, science, science, science. And here we're exploring Hollow Earth. That was something I really enjoyed as well. 90% of this movie, maybe like 85% of this movie, takes place in Hollow Earth. I was just tired of the above ground stuff. Here, when we bring it to Hollow Earth, it is a whole new world. That was one of the reasons I love Kong Skull Island so much, is because it's a new environment, you're exploring new things, all these creatures, all the landscape and these plants, and everything was just so interesting. Just the world building here is fantastic, and you get that here with Hollow Earth. It really got me thinking to Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. That was built up as a big thing of like, oh, we're finally going to go to the quantum realm. We're finally going to explore the quantum realm. And then that ended up being a huge, huge disappointment. Well, here is the complete opposite. It's all built up here. Oh, we're finally going to explore Hollow Earth completely. And it's beautiful. I would say, especially in a time where a lot of movies in recent years, CGI is not the best quality, it is on point here. I mean, I at least didn't notice any points in this film where I was like, oh, CGI is not good there. It was great. All the parts that I can think of, it was fantastic. And it's interesting how, again, the human characters are what we care about the least, so they end up conveying so much emotion from these characters. Not so much Godzilla, which also, speaking of that, the movie is called Godzilla X Kong, but really Godzilla doesn't have a huge role in it. He's kind of barely in the movie. This is very much a Kong movie. So honestly, I feel like they should have just called it Kong: A New Empire, and then, I don't know, maybe added Godzilla somewhere in the subtitle, but I feel like they should have made it a little more clear that this is very much a Kong movie. Like Captain America Civil War, that was basically an Avengers movie. You had all the Avengers in there, you had that big crossover, but it was still Captain America Civil War. So I feel like the title could have been different. But personally, I love that. So you Godzilla fans that are hoping for a lot of Godzilla in this film, I mean, what you get of Godzilla is fantastic, so look forward to that, but it is definitely more of a heavy emphasis and focus on Kong and his story, which I thought was great, because personally, I love my boy Kong. I'm Team Kong all the way, so I love that. We do get a bit of a rematch between Kong and Godzilla before they eventually team up. It was great. There were some other interesting kaiju that were in play here. There was one that they had featured in the movie that I didn't expect to come into play, but did, and that was really cool. Again, just the visuals and the whole vibe of this film was just so much fun. I mean, when you pair giant reptilian lizard beast shooting fire out of its mouth that is now pink, and giant monkey with an Infinity Gauntlet and an axe, team that up with a Guardians of the Galaxy style soundtrack, it's going to be a fun movie. And that's exactly what this was for me. It was fun. and I just had so much enjoyment with it. This is definitely one of my favorite films of the year so far. We're still early on, but man, it was just so much fun. This, I don't know if I would say it's my favorite movie of the MonsterVerse. Yeah, I'd have to rewatch it at least one more time, because I do really love Kong Skull Island. But it's definitely up there. Like I said, definitely prefer it way more over Godzilla versus Kong. It was a great movie. I had a lot of fun. I highly recommend it, guys. You should go check this out in theaters. See it on a big screen. Beautiful experience. I had a great time with it. But let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Did you see Godzilla x Kong: The New Empire? What did you think about it? I may be doing a spoiler review. I don't know for sure yet, so possibly stay tuned for that. But for now, guys, thank you so much for watching. Please drop a like if you enjoyed this video and hit the subscribe button so I keep up to date on everything goes on in the movie life.